Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Baylor. Thank you for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every single day, live on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm Drake Toll, breaking things down across conference realignment because it's only gotten crazier the further we've gotten into this when it comes to Baylor. A big part of that is the opportunity for Baylor to join the SEC. Now, we had an episode about this last week, and I think everybody was in agreement that it sounded crazy, right? That's the first thing you hear when you hear Baylor to the SEC. The first thing you think is there's just no way. The little Baptist school in Waco, Texas, that the SEC would want to go to Baylor as the next 4, 8, even 12 in. And to me, it was the same way. I did not feel like Baylor had enough of a brand, Baylor had enough money, Baylor had enough to sell themselves to the Southeastern Conference. But obviously, others have different ideas. Now, if you're a betting person, bet online, then you know that Vegas always knows something. Right now, Bovada has come out with lines on which teams are slated to join the SEC next. Now, it's no surprise. Clemson's number one right now at plus 250 odds. Those are the best odds you can place a bet on at Bovada. Number two is Miami, plus 325. Now, there are problems with that within themselves. Miami's football stadium is not on campus. Miami itself is kind of in a funky situation. It's Coral Gables, and how much does the SEC want a team that hasn't had a successful football program in a good bit? And you're taking a bit of a risk with Miami. Florida State, plus 250 odds as well. They're tied with Clemson right up there for the top. And it seems like that brand of Florida State can carry them in general, and you're getting a good value with that. Fourth place in these rankings, Baylor. It's not UNC. It's not Virginia. It's not any of those ACC schools that you would think the SEC would go and poach. Even a Notre Dame, if the SEC wanted to pull that from the Big Ten, because you know that this conference is going to be stingy in what they do moving forward. No, instead, it's Baylor. So what do you make of that? What do you make of that? That it's not a fan. This is not a even a sports site in the ESPN or Bleacher Report or even Barstool are saying that Baylor's going to be the SEC, but it's instead Vegas. You can put money on Baylor going to the SEC with fourth best odds of anybody out there. To me, that shows that it's a lot more realistic than maybe we think. It's a lot more realistic than even I thought. So I'm thinking SEC. I don't even have Baylor as the top Big 12 school that would be poached. I have Oklahoma State up there, which Bovada would agree. Oklahoma State plus 600 odds that they're still in that realm of the top 5, top 6. Oklahoma State or even, Kansas basketball brand sends them to a lot or gives them a lot of prowess. Or maybe it's Texas Tech or maybe it's even TCU. I don't know if these schools are necessarily above Baylor, but I wouldn't be surprised if the SEC saw it that way. But no, according to Bovada, according to Las Vegas, who always knows something, Baylor has a run in this race. What does that mean for the Bears, though? If Baylor's the next team taken to the SEC, it's going to change the face of the university. Baylor's not going to be a Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt struggles to win 6 games. 6 games in the SEC is great. Baylor instead reminds me a lot of a team, maybe like an Arkansas. Maybe you have 2 or 3 down years, you go through a rough stretch, but overall you have success. Or an Ole Miss, right? Where 10 wins is kind of your cap over the course of time, but you win 6 games one year, 8 games the next year, your 10-win season, and then repeat. Wash, rinse, repeat. Perennially 8-4 is where I think Baylor would land in the SEC. But to me, even more importantly, it's not necessarily about how Baylor would do success-wise in the SEC, but it's about the way the brand for Baylor would continue to grow. These teams in the Southeastern Conference, from Auburn to Alabama to Kentucky to Florida to Arkansas to even Missouri, Texas A&M, are schools that are respected across college athletics because they are part of the undoubtedly best conference in sports. There is no way to argue it. There's no way to argue it. It's the biggest brands, especially with Texas and Oklahoma going, to go anywhere or any conference. It's the SEC. That is the mecca, really, of college athletics, and it obviously starts with football. So, to me, it says way more about Baylor's brand and their sustainability and the way they're viewed in college athletics, that they're in the next 5 possible teams to go to the SEC. So one of the things that I really want to get into today's show as well is not just the likelihood of Baylor going to the SEC, but also what has to happen for that to be a reality. And do you want it to be a reality? Because I'll be honest with you, to me, it seems like a bit of a stretch. Before that, though, back to the brand. Baylor in the SEC becomes bigger than Vanderbilt. What's Vanderbilt good at? Think about it right now. What's Vanderbilt good at? Vanderbilt is good at baseball. Most years, nine out of 10 years, they're good at baseball. Vanderbilt is hardly ever good at basketball. They are never good at football. And the only thing that's carrying them in the SEC, I'll say, the only thing that's carrying them is academics. They're the guys. They're the nerds of the SEC. Baseball is not a big moneymaker. Baseball is not keeping you in a power conference. Academics is what carries that squad. Do you think the SEC regrets going with Vanderbilt to add to the conference historically? Maybe so, because they just don't give you a lot to work with. They're not helping you out money-wise. They're the Kansas of the conference if you compare the Big 12 to the SEC. And that's why I almost like the idea of Baylor going. Vanderbilt has a really good national brand, and a big part of that's the conference they're in. Baylor, I don't know if Baylor has the same national brand as Vanderbilt. Think about that. I don't know if Baylor has the same national brand as Vanderbilt, mostly because, again, Vanderbilt's a great academic school. You think the big, the Power 5 schools that have great academics, your Stanfords, your Dukes, Vanderbilt's in the top 3 to 5 of that conversation, and that's going to carry them a lot. And another big part of that's the SEC, because if Vanderbilt was in the AAC, they wouldn't be viewed the way they are. Same as SMU is not viewed as one of the top academic schools in the country, whereas if they were in the SEC, it'd be a lot different. There'd be a lot bigger spotlight on that. And Baylor could be that in the SEC, but even more so because their athletics are, get this, actually good. Where Vanderbilt is not good at sports, Baylor excels at football, basketball, baseball's in the possible come up. Women's basketball speaks for itself. Volleyball's been in the Final Four in the last 3 seasons. Baylor's got a legitimate opportunity to go to the SEC to make waves and to build that brand into something that's got a national prowess. And it's not impossible. It's not impossible, especially when Vegas says it's on the table. But then what does Baylor have to do to get to the SEC? What dominoes have to fall to see this team outside of the Big 12 and in the SEC over the course of realignment? Well, that's what I get into after I tell you about Rock Auto. I got in a bit of a fender bender here recently, and Rock Auto has been a lifesaver. So this episode is brought to you by Rock Auto, and with the ever-increasing number of makes and models, it's now impossible for your local chain and parts store to give you all the parts you ever need. They don't have it in stock. There's just no physical way. That's why Rock Auto is built, right? So that when your chain store, your local store doesn't have it, they do, no matter what, in stock and ready to get to you. Why endure pointless, intimidating questions at the local spot when you go to Rock Auto? Do it yourself. Save time and money. Choose to spend 30, 40, 100% less on products at rockauto.com. And it's a family business. They serve do-it-yourselfers. They've been doing so for over 20 years. That's Rock Auto. We encourage you to discover what your car needs. If there's anything from cup holders to door handles, go to Rock Auto, look it up. When they ask you how you found out about them, write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us, so they know we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need are at rockauto.com. All right, so maybe the more complex part of the Baylor to the SEC conversation becomes how. If the SEC, if Greg Sankey, the commissioner, calls tomorrow Mac Rose and Linda Livingstone and says, we want you to be members of the SEC. We're expanding to 20 teams. We're going to add, we're scratching Virginia. We're scratching UNC even. We want to add Baylor, Clemson, Florida State, and Miami. Those are the top 4 teams on Bovada. Granted, I don't think Bovada necessarily has a monopoly on college football knowledge, but I've already mentioned it plenty of times that when Vegas says something, there's got to be some kind of something to it because people are putting money on it, and these are actual betting sites that have to have some sort of knowledge to put something out there. So if Greg Sankey makes that phone call, what does Mac Rhodes say? What does Linda Livingstone say? It to me feels like your first answer, your obvious answer is yes. But Mac's fought really hard to stay in the Big 12. Mac's fought really hard for the Big 12 to stay together. Linda's in that same boat. Dr. Livingstone, Dr. Rhodes, both want Baylor to be a part of a stronger than ever Big 12, especially with the addition, and Mac's talked about this, of BYU, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. Baylor's a big part of why the Big 12 did not implode, similar to the Pac-12 and soon to be the ACC, when it came time for the conversation last summer of realignment. Now you're in the middle of new realignment, and the Big 12 feels stronger than ever, mostly because you've got Oregon, Washington, Colorado, Utah, those schools that are on the phone right now saying, hey, we need a backup plan. We don't want to go to the Mountain West. We got to go somewhere. Why not the Big 12? Arizona State also included in that. So Baylor's in a great spot in the Big 12 in general. But if the SEC is going to add 4 more schools, why not say yes? Why not say yes? Because to me, when I first heard the idea of Baylor to the SEC, the big thing that felt like it was getting in the way of that was, do you get an opportunity to do so? At what point is there a clear path away from the Big 12 that's expanding and into the SEC? Well, you don't have to be a foundational member in the new Big 12, which is objectively, objectively going to be worse than the new SEC and the new Big Ten. If there are a power three conferences, there's really only a power two. Why? The biggest brand, the most money is coming from the Big Ten and the SEC. If the Big 12 is your third power conference, more power to you. We'll consider you a power conference, but your money and your talent will not match that. That's just the way it's going to be. The SEC, the Big Ten are going to be the big dogs, and you got to accept that as they are right now, even without the power conference setup. So if one of those power conferences, if it's the Big Ten that calls Baylor and says, we want to add you in, the revenue that comes from that is going to be exponentially more than you'd get from the Big 12, especially in the new look Big 12, where you lose major moneymakers in Texas and Oklahoma. In going to the SEC, you are effectively making yourself rich for years and years and years to come. The competition gets a lot harder. Your window to make the college football playoff becomes a lot tougher. But at the same time, why don't you want that? There is a reason that Oklahoma has never won a college football playoff game. They could get there through the Big 12. The Big 12 conference gave them a great avenue to get to the Final Four, but they couldn't win a game there because they didn't have the same level of athletes. They didn't have the same level of scheme. They weren't used to playing that level of team when they got to a Georgia or an Alabama at the college football playoff. And what makes you think Baylor's going to be any different? What makes you think that Baylor can get to that Final Four of the college football playoff and beat the Alabama, the Georgia, when Oklahoma couldn't, and when you're not playing teams that are as good as those in the SEC? The SEC is a better football conference. And speaking from a football standpoint, if Baylor goes there, now the avenue to the college football playoff gets a lot tougher, and it's a lot smaller. But at the same time, once you're there, you got a lot better odds of actually winning the whole thing. Can Baylor win a national championship out of the Big 12? I don't think so. I don't think so. Why is that? Because instead of playing Auburn, instead of playing LSU, instead of playing Alabama and Georgia in the regular season, you're playing Colorado, Arizona State, TCU, Houston, and then when you get to the Final Four, you're playing those Big Ten of the SEC schools you're just not used to. When there's the Power Two and the other guys aren't going to get much. Even more so, why does it make sense for a team like Baylor, a school like Baylor, to go to the SEC? Get ready for this. A limited playoff. What is stopping the SEC and the Big Ten from completely warping the way they do the postseason? These conferences could very easily say, we're going to host our own postseason tournament. You guys, the third option, the Big 12, we don't really want to involve you. In the event the ACC and the Pac-12 implode, it's those three conferences. What would give the SEC and the Big Ten reason to hold on to the Big 12 and help court them through college athletics? It would be pointless. They would lose money trying to do it. They don't have any responsibility to keep anybody else relevant in this fight for realignment. So if you're joining the SEC, if you're a team like LSU, or make it a team like Texas, Oklahoma, or on the Big Ten side, a team like USC or UCLA, you're making this decision for knowledge of the scope of college athletics is changing rapidly. And if you're not with the times, you will be left behind. If Baylor's not with the times, they'll be left behind. And the same goes for every school that hasn't already signed the dotted line with the Big Ten or the SEC, a la Oregon State, Washington State, two schools that right now are on the phone with the Mountain West, hoping the Mountain West says yes so they can still find themselves in a decently okay conference. They're not going to be in the Power Three. There's no way. Until those Power Three expand into 28 teams each, which is likely inevitable, those other schools like your Washington State, your Oregon State, don't have a leg to stand on to be able to be welcomed into these conferences right away. Baylor, though, does have that leg to stand on. And if that call is made, it's obvious that you say yes. You don't get this. You don't have any loyalty to TCU. You don't have any loyalty to Texas Tech. You don't have any loyalty to Oklahoma State or to Kansas State or to Kansas or these other Big 12 schools. There is nothing saying that your brotherhood or alliance with these schools in the last decade is what's going to keep you there and keep you from the opportunities the SEC would bring you. Why? Let's be honest about this. Let's be honest about this. How many of these schools wanted to keep Baylor in the Big 12 during realignment in 2012? How many of these schools wanted to keep Baylor in the Big 12 in realignment last summer? Yeah, you had a coalition, but any given university would have been fine to throw Baylor to the wayside if it meant keeping the Big 12 alive. If it came down to, okay, we can add 4 new teams, but 2 teams have to go, I'm so confident that most of these schools would have said, sweet, see you later, Baylor, and their BU would have been the wayside. So then what gives you loyalty to the Big 12? And it sounds funky. Baylor leaves the Big 12 for the SEC. It does. But it's a reality that we're not that far away from, and there shouldn't be keeping anything. There shouldn't be anything keeping Dave Aranda, Mac Rhodes, Linda Livingstone, the rest of the administration, the rest of the head coaches at Baylor from saying no to the SEC. As they expand, as the athletic department expands, Baylor has a caliber that's reaching that level. Dave Aranda came to build a team that was at that level. So why not go do it? Why not join the big dogs that give you a seat at the table? If that happens, if it comes to pass, which again, not that far-fetched, not near as far-fetched as I thought it was last week, do it. Jump all over it. Your basketball team's going to thrive in the SEC. Your baseball team's going to have much better recruiting. Your football team is going to have much better recruiting in the SEC because everyone wants to play in that conference. So why not go do it if the opportunity presents itself? I want to tell you a little bit about our friend Austin Novosad. He's become a pretty frequent conversation on this show, as he should be. Baylor's commit, who now has an offer from Notre Dame. Will he choose Baylor? Has been the big question for the last couple of weeks. And I'm still asking it. First, though, I got to tell you about Built Bar. Built Bar is one of my favorite new things that have come out of working for Locked On. Built Bar right now has a brownie coconut chunk Built Bar puff. I know, a lot of things going on there. It sounds like a lot of calories, but it's not. Built Bars are low calorie, low sugar, high protein, and delicious. They're actually good for you. You go to Built.com right now. Don't miss out. What you're going to see is coconut brownie chunk puffs that are only here for a limited time. They're going fast because they taste amazing. They're all made with collagen protein. You did not think you'd hear the word collagen on today's show, but you did. Your body absorbs that more efficiently. It provides a ton of health benefits. Eat something that tastes good and is good for you. And the whole best part about the Built Bar Puffs, too, is they taste amazing and you can enjoy them guilt-free because they're good for you. They're the perfect treat. Once you got craving, you got to satisfy your sweet tooth. Built Bar Puffs are like eating a candy bar, not feeling bad about it because they're good for you. Delicious coconut, rich, sweet brownie, creamy marshmallow. Stop fantasizing. Get to Built.com. Built.com right now. Use promo code LOCKED15. Built.com. Promo code LOCKED15 gets you 15% off at Built.com. All right, we're going to open up the Austin Novosad conversation that we always do. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Austin Novosad is one of my favorite guys out of this next Baylor class. And he should be yours too, because Novosad's one of the top quarterbacks across America. And he has now gotten another offer. According to his Twitter, Notre Dame has offered Austin Novosad. Now, I have a philosophy. I don't think everybody in media has this philosophy, and that's okay. Some guys are different. I have a philosophy where I try to not talk to recruits that much. So Austin's been on this show before, but there are plenty of guys who every time Novosad or somebody else gets offer, they'll give him a call or give him a text. I've refrained from that, but I have heard of multiple people around him and around where I work that have had discussions with Novosad about Notre Dame. And one of the cool parts about this guy, kind of quiet, not shy necessarily, but a quieter guy who's very confident in his own abilities and very confident in Baylor. He had this, according to a source, a quiet, almost, I don't know. I don't want to say that he wasn't excited about the Notre Dame offer, but he is so locked in right now, especially locked into Baylor, that it feels like Novosad is not really a threat to go anywhere else until the day comes where he says he's not. It's almost like and I don't even know if it applies universally to recruiting. It doesn't, but the innocent until proven guilty. Austin Novosad is a Baylor Bear until proven otherwise. Novosad right now is the number 9 quarterback in the country, according to Rivals. He's number 136 overall player. 136 overall player, 6'3", 190 pounds, committed to Baylor, but has offers from Ohio State, Texas A&M, and Notre Dame. Now, when Austin Novosad first committed to Baylor, you thought, okay, sweet. Dripping Springs, 3,400 yards passing, 40 touchdowns as a junior, 10-1 record. That's pretty good. Completed 64% of his passes. I like that. Whew. His other offers aren't very good. No, they weren't. Novosad was kind of a diamond in the rough. It was Dave Aranda going out, finding a guy who he really liked and thought this guy can develop into one of the best quarterbacks in the country. And Dave Aranda was absolutely right. Because since Baylor offered him, give it a couple months, folks start talking. He goes to the Elite 11 and shows out at the Elite 11. He's got offers from Ohio State, Texas A&M, and now Notre Dame. All big names across college football, all big NIL schools too. So these are schools that would go to Novosad and say, hey, we could give you $150,000, $200,000 a year in NIL deals. So you're really testing the guy's loyalty at this point, because as we've had the conversation on this show before, Baylor does not want the guy who is searching for $250,000 to $300,000 or $1 million in NIL deals across the course of his college career. Baylor can give you $60,000, $70,000, $100,000. And, I'd be happy with $60,000 a year from my university to play college football right now. And I think Novosad would be too. He has this loyalty, this reverence, a respect for Baylor University and the Baylor way because they were the first ones to get to him. He has not gone out and looked at other universities and said, oh, I'm going to decommit and even try the waters. He's getting these offers while still being committed to Baylor and hasn't really wavered. It's the idea to me that, a lot of you know that I'm on Cape Cod. I got a job offer on Cape I'm doing an unpaid internship right now. I have decided to go here and really hone my craft in sports broadcast and take an unpaid internship and try to chase what I love to do. I got a call about a week after accepting the position that I have with a team, doing radio for a team. It was a different team that called. They offered thousands of dollars in compensation to do more stuff over the course of the summer. It was going to be a bigger opportunity, maybe even a better opportunity, and financially it made a lot more sense. But at the end of the day, I had given my word to someone. I gave my word to the team that came to me first. I gave my word to the opportunity that came to me first. And maybe it wasn't as good as an opportunity on paper, but I knew the people that were giving it to me were genuine, and I knew that they cared. So I decided I'm going to take the offer that sounds way, way worse and makes no sense to do. I'm going to try it and see what happens. Been one of the most rewarding decisions of my life. Because when you're loyal to something, when you find something that really wants you, right? A community, a group, a university that really wants you, stick with it. They were the first ones to offer Austin Novosad. And he has that mentality of, you guys were first. When nobody else knew who I was, when nobody else wanted me, Baylor University wanted Austin Novosad, and I really believe that it's going to pay dividends in the long run. Because think about it personally for you. Every decision you've made, it's been a decision about loyalty. It's been one where you're going to be loyal to someone who is loyal to you, has always paid dividends in the end. Maybe it's not the best opportunity. Maybe Novosad can't make $1 million here at Baylor, but that's okay. Because when you do what's right from the jump, things always work out better. They always work out better. And I can tell you that for the amount of guys that are transferring out of Texas or Ohio State or Alabama that aren't transferring out of Baylor right now. Because when you do right by people, they'll do right by you. And Baylor University will do right by Austin Novosad, as they already have in this process. He understands that. He sees that. And Austin Novosad is committed until proven uncommitted. He's a Baylor until proven otherwise. And I'm really excited about the prospect of getting him to Waco, the number 9 quarterback in this class, with offers from A&M, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Stanford. And Baylor is going to prove that their care for people, that Baylor way, is going to trump any amount of money that could be given to Austin Novosad down the stretch. I truly believe that. I think he's going to be the dividend, a factor, a dividend, whatever you want to say, moving forward that makes Baylor elite with Dave Aranda in the Big 12 or in the SEC, which again, a lot less far-fetched than we once thought on this show. I once thought it was crazy. Starting to think it's less crazy. You may think I'm crazy, but come on. Bovada says it. I don't know, but how often's Bovada wrong? Vegas isn't wrong a lot. Bovada said Baylor's in that next 4. We'll see what happens. Thank you for listening to today's show. Come back on Friday. Or we'll do a lot of basketball coverage because Baylor played against the world in college basketball and actually did really well. We're going to break that down. There's a lot of stuff also in recruiting to break down as well. As we get closer and closer to football season, we are almost there. So thank you for making Locked On Baylor your first listen every single day. We'll see you back here on Friday. This has been, I'm Drake Toll, and the Twitter handle, as always, Locked On Baylor.